Lucio started the wheelchair motor the exact moment the security guard stepped forward. It wasn't a collision. It was a calculated hit and run. The black leather boot caught in the wheel with enough force to lock the motor. But Lucio felt the impact travel up the metal arm, vibrate in his spine, explode between his shoulder blades. He screamed, not from pain, from surprise. The Leclerc restaurant was packed, the tables visible through the stained glass windows, and Lucio was on the floor, on the red carpet, out of the chair. The security guard didn't move to help. Carlos descended the 3 steps of the entrance slowly. He stopped beside Lucio, who was trying to sit up, trying to find some support, but his legs wouldn't respond, never would. And now his arms were failing too, excruciating sciatic pain, a consequence of old falls. Carlos looked down and spat. The saliva hit Lucio's cheek, hot, viscous, sliding down to his mouth. "Get up, or are you going to stay there like a run-over dog for the rest of the night?" The line to get into the restaurant had 15 people, rich, well-dressed. A woman in a fur coat laughed softly, that hidden swallowing sound. A younger man filmed with his cell phone, not to report it, but to show his friends later. "Ha ha, look at the disabled guy on the floor." Lucio reached for the chair, trying to pull it, but Carlos put his boot on top of his hand. "I said, get up, walk, or you don't get in." Lucio felt the bones in his hand give way under the sole. They didn't break, but they hurt enough for him to let out a groan he didn't want to let out. The shame was worse than the pain. The shame of being on all fours, on the floor, being stepped on, while people dined 3 meters away, protected by the glass, protected by money, protected by the luck of having legs that worked. "I am the guest of honor tonight. Award ceremony, architect. I designed this building." Carlos laughed, genuinely, loud enough for the security guards outside to hear. He bent down, not to help Lucio up, to whisper in his ear, low, smelling of cigarettes and sour coffee, the voice of someone who had done this before, many times, in other lives, in other wars. "You may have designed the walls, you cripple, but I control who enters them, and you don't, ever. Stay on the floor, stay in the shit. That's where you crippled trash deserve to stay." Carlos stood up, took a step back, and kicked the chair. The chair rolled, hit the restaurant wall, tipped over. The battery shattered against the concrete, dark liquid leaking out, smelling of chemicals, like black blood. Lucio remained on the carpet. He didn't try to get up anymore. He looked at the golden invitation that had fallen from his pocket, now stained by Carlos's boot, now torn. Now nothing. Senator Macedo hadn't arrived yet. The cameras weren't rolling. In that minute, in those 40 seconds, Lucio was alone on the floor, trampled, spat on, broken, while Carlos adjusted his tie, smiled at the customers entering and said cheerfully, "Welcome to Leclerc. Your table awaits you. Leave a like now if this scene infuriated you, and comment part 2 if you want to see this security guard pay for every second of humiliation." Senator Macedo didn't walk. He advanced. The dark wooden cane struck the marble with a dry sound, a metronome of contained rage. He was 65 years old, had emphysema in his lungs, 3 heart surgeries, and that night more vigor than 30-year-old men. He stopped 20 centimeters from Carlos. The security guard didn't back down. A trained soldier, he didn't back down. He didn't know how to back down. To back down was to die. To back down was to lose. To back down was to return to the hell of ashes and mud. But his eyes met Macedo's, and something broke. Perhaps it was the reflection of the stained glass window on the senator's face. Perhaps it was the absolute, unquestionable certainty that this old man would buy the restaurant only to fire him and then burn it down. Macedo didn't look at Lucio on the floor. Not yet. First, he needed to break the breaker. "Do you have children, Carlos? Don't answer. It's rhetoric. I know you do. I know where they study. I know the tuition is 3,000. I know you just lost the job that pays that tuition. Now look down." Carlos looked down, not into Macedo's eyes, at Lucio, still on the floor, still on all fours, still with the spit drying on his cheek. The empty, broken chair would bang against the wall. And then Macedo did something no one expected. He knelt, not easily. With effort, with a stifled groan, his hand on his chest, he knelt on the red carpet beside Lucio, placing his 50,000 real suit on the same floor where Lucio had been stepped on, and he reached out his hand, not to lift Lucio from the floor, to hold his hand, to remain on the ground with him. A Japanese tourist's camera clicked, then another, then 10. The flash illuminated the surreal scene. The millionaire on the ground, the betrayed wheelchair user, the paralyzed security guard. Don Enrico ran out the door, sweat dripping from his transplanted hair, his voice trembling with panic. "Macedo, please, you don't need to—" "Yes, you do." Macedo was still holding Lucio's hand. He looked up at Carlos, and his voice was low, but each word was a sentence. "You're not fired. You're destroyed. I will personally ensure you never work in security in this country again, or any other. Now get out, before I change my mind and sue you for assault." Carlos didn't move immediately. His eyes met Lucio's. For the first time, they truly met. And Lucio, still on the ground, still humiliated, still broken, smiled, not a smile of victory, a smile of promise. "I know where you live, Carlos." His voice was hoarse, scratchy, but heard. "And I know what you did." Carlos's expression changed. It was no longer arrogance, it was terror. Macedo helped Lucio sit down. Then, holding him by the arm, he helped him stand up, leaning against the wall. The chair was destroyed. Lucio would be without it that night. But when Macedo held him, when the flashes exploded, when the crowd applauded, Lucio looked back at Carlos retreating into the shadows and whispered, too low for Macedo to hear, too loud for Carlos not to hear. "Now we're both on the ground, but I know how to get up, and you're going to learn how to sink. Subscribe to the channel now. This security guard's revenge will be devastating, and you won't believe what comes next." 3 days. Carlos didn't sleep for 3 full days. He would sleep in fragments. 20 minutes in the boarding house armchair, waking up startled, hand searching for a weapon he no longer had, heart racing at 120 beats per minute, cold sweat, nightmare of blood and mud. His wife had left on the 2nd day. He grabbed his son, 3 suitcases, the wedding photo, and left, leaving only a note on the refrigerator. It didn't say goodbye. It said, "I don't recognize you anymore," and he didn't want to recognize you. The money ran out on the 3rd day. The rent for the boarding house was due. Carlos tried bars. He tried event security. He tried construction site security. In each interview, the interviewer's face changed upon recognition. "Ah, you're that one. Sorry, the position has just been filled. Sorry, your documents don't match. Sorry, we're not hiring right now." On the 4th day, he went to his wife's house. Her mother opened the door, immediately closed it, called the police. Carlos stood on the sidewalk in the light rain until sunrise, looking at the window of the room where he knew his son slept. The boy was 7 years old. His name was Arthur. Carlos had plans to take him to Disney. Now he didn't have money for the bus back. The internet wouldn't stop. The video of his fall had 15 million views, memes, montages, his face superimposed on animal carcasses. His face was covered up by war criminals. Comments wishing for his death. Comments wishing for violence against his wife. Comments wishing his son would grow up knowing his father was a scoundrel. Carlos found a bottle of vodka on the 5th day. He drank half before noon. The other half went down at 3 in the afternoon. And then, drunk, smashing the kitchen chair against the wall of the boarding house, shouting so no one would hear, he saw the newspaper, Lucio's picture, smiling, holding the trophy, standing. No, wait. The photo had been edited. Or not. No, it was real. Lucio was standing in the photo, using crutches, but standing. The caption read, "Architect overcomes prognosis and walks to receive award." Carlos read the article 3 times. Lucio, disabled but not completely. Partial paraplegia, possibility of rehabilitation. And that night in the restaurant, Lucio could perhaps have gotten up. He could have avoided the fall. He could have fought. But no. He chose to stay on the ground. He chose to be a victim. He chose to be martyred. Anger replaced alcohol. Carlos was no longer drunk. He was lucid, terribly lucid, and in his lucidity, the plan came. If Lucio wanted to be seen as a saint, as a martyr, as the poor, humiliated wheelchair user, then Carlos would show the world who he really was. He would show his weaknesses. He would show his secrets. He would show that behind the wheelchair was a man like any other. And then he would break that man, literally. Comment part 2. If you want to see how far this obsession will take this man, because the worst is yet to come. Lucio hadn't been able to sleep since that night, not because of trauma, because of anticipation. He knew Carlos was coming. He knew the type, not military, not exactly, but broken men who found identity in the wound. Carlos had a wound, and Lucio had been the stiletto that opened it. Now, the blood would gush. The question was, when? Lucio prepared the apartment. He changed the locks. He installed cheap cameras he had bought online. He left a sharp kitchen knife in the bedside table drawer, not to kill, to intimidate, to show he wasn't an easy target. He had an advantage over Carlos. He knew the man would come. Carlos didn't know that he knew. The game was unequal, but not in the way Carlos imagined. At 10 o'clock at night, Lucio turned off the lights. He pretended to sleep, but he stayed awake, listening, waiting. At 11, the building fell silent. Mr. Tanaka on the 3rd floor was already purring. Mrs. Gomez on the 5th had taken the dog for its last walk. At midnight, absolute silence. And then the sound, the iron elevator creaking, but not stopping on the 3rd, nor on the 5th. Going up, stopping on the 9th floor. The iron doors opening with a groan of tired old woman. Footsteps in the hallway. Footsteps that tried to be silent, but the leather cleat tapped on the cement floor. Tap, 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 stopping every 3 steps, as if the walker were checking apartment numbers. Lucio gripped the knife. His hand didn't tremble. He had trained for this. Years of painful physiotherapy had taught him one thing. Pain can be mastered. Fear, too. The footsteps stopped outside his door. Number 903, Platinum. The sound of something being dragged along the wall. Chalk? No. Rougher. Metal. Fingernail. Knife. Lucio didn't move. He waited. The sound stopped. Silence. 1 minute. 2. And then a knock. Light. Almost polite, as if the visitor were delivering pizza. Lucio didn't answer. Another knock. Louder. And then the voice. Low. Whispered. Through the thick wooden door, but clear as if it were right next to his ear. I know you're there, architect. I know you're not sleeping. I can hear you breathing. I can hear your fear. Lucio tightened his grip on the knife. He didn't answer. I find it funny, the voice continued. You on the floor. That night, I could have killed you. A stomp on the head. The end. Nobody would know. Accident. A disabled person falls, hits to your head. What a pity. But I didn't. You know why? Because you were nothing. You weren't a threat. You were trash. Now it's different. Now you're famous. Now you matter. And when something matters, it can be destroyed. Lucio finally spoke. He didn't shout. He kept his voice firm, controlled, despite his racing heart. Go away, Carlos. I already called the police. Lies. The police take 20 minutes in this neighborhood. It takes me 2 to break down this door. And I have all the time in the world. Lucio looked at the cameras, on recording. The video being sent to the cloud, proof. But proof of what? A threat? Yes. But so far, only words. Carlos needed to make a mistake. He needed to act. He needed to cross the line. Let's make a deal, Lucio said, surprising himself. You want to destroy me? Okay. But you need to get in first. The door has 3 locks. You can break 2. The third is steel. It'll take more than 2 minutes, and I have something you want. What? The trophy. It's right here. You can break it. Step on it, like you stepped on me. The door is the obstacle. I'm the prize. Let's see if you can get to me. Silence on the other side. Consideration, pondering. And then the sound of footsteps moving away, not far, to the side, towards the window. Lucio looked at the window. 9th floor. Carlos wasn't crazy enough to... The sound of metal against glass. A rope? No. A hook. Carlos was trying the kitchen window. Lucio's apartment was a corner unit. 2 windows, 2 possible entrances. Lucio moved quickly, faster than he thought he could, dragging himself to the spare wheelchair, an old manual one he used for exercise, starting it, rolling into the kitchen, arriving just as the window shattered, the glass falling in pieces onto the ceramic floor, and a hand entering, a large hand, thick fingers, a wedding ring still on his finger, even though his wife had left, and Lucio grabbed that hand, with his left hand, and with his right, the knife. He touched that invading hand. He didn't cut, he just touched it, enough to feel the accelerated pulse under the cold blade. The hand stopped. The voice came from the darkness of the window. "You won't kill me," Lucio replied, almost smiling. "No, but you won't get in. And now I have proof of attempted break-in." The hand retreated, slowly, carefully, withdrawing through the broken window. Before disappearing, Carlos said one last thing. Still, Lucio hadn't touched the destroyed electric chair. He left it in the corner, a war monument, a trophy of humiliation. He used the manual wheelchair now, his arms burning with each thrust, muscles that atrophy had tried to steal, coming back to life in the adrenaline of fear. He examined the loft minute by minute, under the bed, inside the closet, behind the curtain. Nothing. But the photo proved it. Carlos had been there. The message was dated 4:17 a.m. Lucio calculated. He had been awake until 3:45, cooking, unconscious for 30 minutes. 30 minutes, enough time for what? To hide cameras, to poison food, to install something. He opened the refrigerator, threw everything away. Milk, eggs, butter. If Carlos had touched it, Lucio wouldn't eat it. Hunger was safe. Suspicion was a shield. At 6 in the morning, the doorman knocked. Package, small box, no return address. Lucio looked at the box like one looks at a snake. He opened it with a knife, and from a distance. Inside, a chair wheel, his wheel, the broken one, the one that was in the restaurant. Carlos had taken it from the wreckage, and now, polished, clean, almost carefully, it was there. With a note, not on paper, on fabric, white cloth stained brown, dried blood, sweat, ink. The handwriting was that of a doctor, urgent, scribbled with a ballpoint pen that skipped every 3 words. "You took my legs, I'll take yours." Metaphor? Threat? Lucio turned the wheel. On the axle, something gleamed. Screw? No. Needle. Small, medical, sharp point, visible even to the naked eye. Lucio touched it unintentionally. The point pricked the tip of his finger. A drop of blood. Small, irrelevant, but enough. He ran to the bathroom, washed, scrubbed, disinfected. It wasn't HIV. Carlos wasn't sick. He was crazy, but organized crazy, methodical crazy. Lucio looked in the mirror. Pale faces, dark circles under the eyes of someone who hadn't slept in 100 years. And in the reflection, behind him, in the dark hallway, something moved. He turned the chair. Quickly. Looked. Nothing. Shadow. Paranoia. But paranoia keeps people alive. Lucio decided to leave. Not through the door. Through the underground garage, service elevator, back exit, back street. He was descending in the freight elevator when he heard it. The sound of footsteps above. On the 9th floor, in front of his door, stopping. And then the sound of something being dragged, wood, metal, heavy. Lucio froze. The elevator stopped in the basement. The doors opened. Darkness. The parking lot empty at that hour. He activated the chair. Too noisy. It echoed off the cement walls. And behind him, coming from the stairs, footsteps, descending, running, no, jumping, step by step. Heavy, military. Carlos knew about the service elevator. He knew everything. Lucio accelerated. The manual chair wasn't fast. His arms burned. The parking lot corridor seemed like miles. The exit, daylight, the street, security. He spotted the parking lot entrance. 10 meters, 5. And then the light went out. Carlos was at the electrical panel. He knew where it was. Intentional cut. Total darkness. Lucio stopped. He couldn't see. He was breathing too loudly. His heart pounded in his ears, and the sound of footsteps behind him, slowly. Without haste, the chase was over. Leave a like if this chase left you breathless, and comment part 2 to see how Lucio escapes this trap. The darkness of the parking lot wasn't complete. There were cracks. The morning sunlight entered through ventilation grates, gold lines cutting through the black. Lucio had memorized the layout. Column to the left, wall to the right. Exit ahead, 10 meters, maybe 15 now, in his blindness. Carlos's footsteps came from behind, towards the stairs, blocking the ascent. But the ascent wasn't the only way out. Lucio turned the chair, not forward, to the right, wall. Hand on the cold cement, guiding himself, dragging the chair sideways, silently. Carlos's footsteps S-topped. He could hear them too. Lucio's breathing, echo in the cement. The silence was terrible. 2 men in the dark, one hunting, the other fleeing, both knowing that the first contact would be brutal. Lucio found the door. Emergency exit. Lever. He pushed. The alarm sounded, loud, shrill, blinding. The emergency lights came on, red, flashing. Lucio saw Carlos, 3 meters behind, face illuminated in intermittent red, eyes wide open, mouth smiling, enjoying the hunt, enjoying the game. Lucio went out the door. Street, sun, people, normal people going to work. A woman with a dog. A bicycle delivery man. Lucio shouted, "Help! Police!" But his voice came out hoarse, breathless. The woman with the dog looked, frightened, and moved away. The delivery man pedaled faster. Nobody wanted to get involved. Nobody wanted to be the next victim. Lucio activated the chair, down the street, without looking back, knowing that Carlos wouldn't follow him now. Too much light, too many witnesses, but the night would return, and Carlos would be patient. Lucio went to the police station. Testimony. Same story, same indifference. Do you have proof of the threats? I have messages. Showed. Disposable number, unrecognizable origin. And the photo, it could be edited, it could be old. The window, attempted break-in. Let's investigate. Empty words, empty promises. Lucio left the barracks, noon, cruel sun, not knowing where to go. He couldn't go back to the loft. Carlos was there, or had been, or would return. There was no security, no hiding place, unless... Lucio picked up his cell phone. He called Macedo. The senator answered on the second call. Lucio explained. Concise, cold. Macedo's voice changed, no longer worried, furious, controlled. Come to my house, Marumbi. Armed security, alarm, walls, you'll be safe, and then we'll resolve this, for real. Lucio went. Bus, subway, taxi, looking back at every corner, seeing Carlos in every face. Every 40-year-old man, short hair, military posture, was Carlos. Every shadow was Carlos. The paranoia was exhausting, unnecessary. Macedo's house was a fortress. Iron gate, 2 security guards at the entrance, cameras at every angle, dogs. Macedo greeted him in the hall, a fatherly hug. He bent down to look into Lucio's eyes, not at the chair. Into his eyes. You are strong. Stronger than him. You just need time, and we will give you that time. Dinner, room on the 2nd floor, view of the garden. Lucio lay down, soft bed, safe silence, and he slept, deeply, without dreams, without nightmares, for the first time in 7 days. At 3 in the morning, his cell phone vibrated. Message, same disposable number. The photo showed Lucio sleeping in Macedo's bed on the 2nd floor, taken from inside the room. The message said, "Fortresses are illusions. Sleep well. Subscribe to the channel now, because nowhere is safe, and the next message will destroy you." Lucio woke up in a cold sweat. It wasn't the air conditioning. It was terror. The message was there, the photo, the proof. Carlos had been in the room, on the second floor, in Macedo's fortified house. How? Lucio got out of bed, not in a chair, with crutches, rehabilitation forced by adrenaline, painful steps, each one a triumph. He went to the window, closed, locked, iron bars, impossible to enter, but the photo existed. He called Macedo. Midnight, 1 in the morning, 2, 3. The senator didn't answer. Lucio went downstairs, slowly, crutches slipping on the wooden handrail. The hall was dark, silent. He went to the kitchen. Water. He needed water, and he saw the back door, open, just a crack, but open. He hadn't opened it. Nobody had opened it. He approached. The door creaked. It was windy. The cold night entered, and on the floor, in the frame, something shone, the same metal hook, the one Carlos had used on the window, but now, here, Macedo. Lucio shouted. He shouted loudly, breaking courtesy, security, sanity. The dogs barked. The lights came on. The security guards came, with guns, pointing them at him, at the intruder in the chair. No, at the boss's friend. Sorry, sir. We were sleeping. We didn't see anything. How could you not see anything? Cameras. We see hecked. Nothing. Recording deleted. Or it never existed. Or someone deleted it. Someone who knew the system. Someone who had worked in security. Lucio understood. Carlos wasn't breaking in. He was infiltrating, getting to know the system, learning. Every system has a flaw, every fortress a traitor or a blind spot. Lucio returned to the room, not to sleep, to wait, armed with the only weapon he had, intelligence. He analyzed the photo, enlarged it, pixel by pixel, and saw, in the reflection of the room's mirror, a figure shadowy but recognizable. Not Carlos, another, an accomplice, or Lucio looked at the door, the lock, the bolt, and remembered. When he entered, Macedo had said, "The room is yours. The key is in the drawer." But the key hadn't been there. The door had been open for him, and for whom else? Morning arrived uneventfully. Macedo appeared at the cafe, worried, elderly, frail. For the first time, Lucio saw his age, the illness, the mortality. The senator wasn't the fortress. He was the bait, or the victim. Lucio told him about the door, about the hook. Macedo turned pale, not from fear, from guilt. "I hired new security guards. Yesterday, recommended." By whom? By a friend. A trusted friend. Which friend? The name came out. Carlos Ramirez, brother of Carlos. No, a lie, an invention. Macedo had been deceived, the house had been invaded from the inside, and Lucio had been the lure, the bait for the old senator. Lucio looked at Macedo and realized Carlos's plan wasn't to kill him. It was to destroy him, to isolate him, to show that no place was safe, no trustworthy friend, no impregnable fortress. And it was working. Comment on part 2 if you want to find out who Carlos's accomplice is inside Macedo's house. Macedo wasn't a fool, just old. And old age, Lucio knew, was the greatest traitor. The mind that had once been sharp now trusted too much. He gave names to strangers. He called someone he didn't know a friend. Lucio needed to leave, but where to? Carlos was everywhere, or had eyes everywhere. The accomplice, still unidentified, still in the house, maybe in the kitchen, maybe in outside security. There was no way to know. Lucio studied the house's blueprints. Architect, that's what he did. Find flaws, create solutions. The house had a basement, old, from the dictatorship era, used to shelter the persecuted. Macedo had told stories, an exit, a tunnel, to the back street. It wasn't a secret, it was history, but forgotten stories become secrets. Lucio went down, crutches on the damp concrete, dim light. The basement smelled of mold, peeling paint, memory. He found the door, steel, rusty, but open, always open. Macedo used to say, "You never know when you'll need to escape." Lucio went in. The tunnel was short, 10 meters, maybe 20. Daylight appeared. A gate. Surround ended by bushes. The street. Freedom. But he stopped. Before leaving, he looked back. The dark tunnel. And he heard footsteps in the basement, still distant, but coming, searching. Lucio pressed himself against the wall. His breath held. The footsteps drew closer. They stopped at the steel door. The key turned. The door opened. The basement light illuminated the figure. It wasn't Carlos. It was younger, 20-something, same face, same eyes, son. Carlos had a son, the boy his wife had taken away, but no. Wait. The boy at the door held a gun, small, a pressure gun, non-lethal, but incapacitating. And he said, a child's voice trying to sound adult, "My father said you hurt the family. My father said you're the monster. I came to see the monster." Lucio didn't move. How do you talk to a ghost? How do you explain to an armed child that his father is the villain? You don't explain. You show. Lucio moved away from the wall. He stepped into the light. He let the boy see the abandoned chair at the top of the stairs, the crutches, the broken body, a face, young too, only 30 years old, tired eyes, not of a monster, of a victim. The boy hesitated. The gun trembled. And then an adult voice came from the tunnel. "Arthur, no. The name is Carlos," appearing behind his son, taking the gun, crouching down to be at the boy's height. "It's not him, son. It's the other one, the one who destroyed Dad." Lucio looked at Carlos, and for the first time he saw the truth. It wasn't just revenge. It was theater for his son, to create a narrative, hero and villain, protective father, cruel enemy. Lucio was the jackal, Carlos the courageous father, and Arthur the audience. The child looked at Lucio, confused. The gun was too real, the story too false, but children believe their parents, even when they shouldn't. Carlos raised the gun, pointed it at Lucio, not to kill, to act, for his son to see, for the world to see. When the story was told, self-defense, the intruder, the threat. But Arthur moved, first, without thinking, instinctively. He pushed his father's arm. The shot echoed. In the tunnel, muffled, metal hitting concrete, not flesh. The light bulb shattered. Darkness, screams. Whose? Lucio didn't know. Run, crawling, to the gate, to the light, out. His hands found cold iron. He pushed. The gate opened. Bushes, street, someone shouting behind him, not Carlos. "Arthur, Dad, Dad." And then silence. Carlos didn't come out, didn't chase, let Lucio go, because the hunt had changed. It wasn't about destroying Lucio anymore. It was about saving Arthur from the truth, that his father was the monster. Lucio ran as far as he could, until his crutches broke, until he fell on the asphalt, until someone stopped. A car, a woman, fear in her eyes, but compassion, help, finally. Like if the revelation about the son broke you, and comment part 2 to see how this child will change everything. The woman who stopped didn't ask his name. She didn't ask what happened. She just opened the car door, helped Lucio get in. Not easy, with his useless legs, broken crutches, body weighing like a stone, and drove. Silence for 10 minutes. Then she spoke, not to him, to the radio, or to herself. "I saw the video from the restaurant. You are him." It wasn't a question. Lucio didn't answer. He had no energy. She continued, "My brother is in a wheelchair, multiple sclerosis, 3 years. I saw what you went through. I saw what he does." The security guard. Lucio opened his eyes. He looked at her, 30-something, short hair, firm hands on the steering wheel, eyes that didn't cry, that had already cried too much. "Did he follow me? No. I lost him 3 blocks ago, but he knows. He always knows. Where am I going?" She finally looked at him, quickly, before returning to the road, to a place he can't go. Lucio wanted to ask where, but he fell asleep, his body shutting down, protection. When he woke up, he was in a small room, white, hospital bed, but not a hospital bed. It didn't smell of disinfectant. It smelled of coffee, of bread, of life. He tried to get up, he couldn't. No crutches, no chair, just his body, immobile from the waist down. The door opened. The woman with a wheelchair, old, from a hospital, but functional. She brought it. From her brother. He doesn't need it anymore. He died. Yesterday. Coincidence. Or not. Maybe the universe worked like that. Exchanges. One goes, another comes. Lucio sat in the chair, adjusted it, looked at the woman. "Why are you helping me?" "Because someone needs it, and you're the only person who can stop him. Carlos. He's not just crazy, he's sick. A sickness that has no name, that doesn't show up in tests." She sat on the bed, near him. She told him. Carlos was a soldier, not a combatant. Medicine, a field nurse. He saw things, he did things. Broken men, who couldn't be saved. He saved them anyway, or thought he saved them, until the day he didn't. His superior helicopter accident. Carlos tried. 40 minutes, cardiac massage, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, blood, so much blood. The superior died, and Carlos changed, not immediately, slowly. He began to see enemies where there were none. He began to punish those who weren't grateful, those who didn't value, those who didn't deserve the perfection, the salvation that he offered, and it wasn't accepted. Lucio heard and understood. It didn't justify, but it explained. Carlos didn't hate disabled people. He hated those who didn't fight, those who gave up, those who complained. That night in the restaurant, Lucio hadn't given up. He had accepted. He had stayed on the floor. He had waited for help. And that, for Carlos, was worse than giving up. It was betrayal of the code, of the blood, of fear. Lucio looked at his hands. They were still trembling, still. The woman said, "He'll come back. He knows you're alive. He knows you escaped. And now he has another reason." The sun, Arthur saw. He questioned. The narrative cracked. Carlos needs to fix it. He needs to prove that he's the hero, that he's the victim, that you're the evil one. How? He'll expose you. Everything, secrets, weaknesses, what you're hiding. Lucio felt cold, not from the room, from within. What he was hiding, the diagnosis. Not just partial paraplegia, ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Stephen Hawking's disease, 6 months, maybe 8. The paralysis worsening, lungs, heart, mind intact, body dying. He hadn't told anyone, not even Macedo, Ness. The woman looked at him and read. She didn't need words. "You're dying," she doesn't ask. A statement. Lucio nodded. She didn't move. She didn't offer comfort. She just said, "Then you have 2 choices. Wait or use what's left. Stop Carlos before he destroys more lives, Arthur, others, because he won't stop. He doesn't know how to stop." Lucio looked at the window. Afternoon sun, warm, distant. Years of struggle. Years of rehabilitation, years proving he was worth it, despite the wheelchair. And now he knew he wasn't worth it, not because of the chair, because of time, running out, escaping. And at that moment it arose, not anger, not fear, clarity. If he had little time, he wouldn't waste it running away. He would seize it every second, to be free, truly, for the first time, since he was 12, since the accident, since the guilt of surviving. He looked at the woman. "What's your name?" "Clara." Lucio extended his hand. The first time he touched someone without fear, in days, without flinching. "Thank you, Clara. Now take me to him, not to run away, to end this." Clara didn't smile, but her eyes shone, lighting up. "Steel." She nodded. "Get ready, because he won't wait." "He's already moving," Lucio asked. "How do you know?" She showed him her cell phone, a message from Carlos to her, a number she hadn't given him, a message that said, "You have it. I know. Give it back, or your brother won't be the only death in your family." Clara looked at Lucio and said, "He doesn't know my brother is already dead. He thinks he can use that against me." Wrong. Lucio agreed. Wrong. And mistakes are opportunities for those who know how to take advantage of them. Subscribe to the channel now. The truth about Lucio's illness changes everything, and the final confrontation is coming. Clara had no plan. Lucio realized this immediately. She was impulsive, contained anger, gas accelerating towards the precipice. He needed to channel it, give it direction, architect, his function, to create structure from chaos. Clara drove, fast, very fast, ignoring traffic lights, running. Not from Carlos, away or close. Lucio didn't know. He asked, "Where to?" She answered, "Where he doesn't expect." "My house," Lucio thought, quickly, analyzing. Carlos would expect this. He would expect refuge, a hiding place. He would expect fear, escape. They couldn't go where Carlos expected. They needed to go where he wouldn't dare follow. Where? The restaurant. Leclerc. Clara almost crashed the car. She turned her face away. He looked at Lucio as if he had gone mad. He tried to kill you there. Exactly. That's why you shouldn't wait. But it's not just that. It's symmetry. It started there. It ends there and more. Witnesses. Public. He doesn't act in public, only in the shadows. Clara considered. She gripped the steering wheel. The whites of her knuckles were visible, and then she turned. Opposite direction. Downtown. Leclerc. Lucio prepared his cell phone. Calls. First, Macedo. He answered. Third call. Lucio explained. Quickly, concisely. The plan. The senator tried to protest. Dangerous, insane, but he stopped. He heard something in Lucio's voice. Not fear, not despair. Acceptance, purpose, Macedo said. I'll be there. With security, with journalists, with cameras. You won't be alone. Second call, police, formal complaint, death threat, stalker, history. He didn't ask for protection. He asked for presence, witnesses. Third call, to the press. Local, a channel that loved drama, blood, ratings. Lucio offered exclusivity, interview, outburst, victim of persecution, wheelchair user, injustice, social media, viral, everything Carlos feared, exposure, loss of control, the narrative slipping away. They arrived at Leclerc at 7 in the evening, rush hour, packed restaurant, exactly like that night. Lucio entered through the main door, Clara pushing the chair, not hiding, not running away, introducing, glances, whispers, recognition, the video, the fame, the tragedy. Lucio went to table 12, the table that should have been his. The night of humiliation. He sat down. He ordered water. He waited. It didn't take long. Carlos appeared at 7:15, not through the door, from the kitchen. Waiter's uniform. Camouflage, perfect. No one recognized him. The different hair, fake glasses, hunched posture, subservient. But Lucio recognized him. The eyes, they don't change. Carlos approached, tray in hand, drink. For Lucio, only for Lucio. He stopped beside the table. He bent down, to place the glass or to whisper. Lucio spoke first, loud, clear, for everyone to hear. Carlos Ramirez, ex-security guard, my stalker, the man who tried to kill me 3 times, here, in my house, in the tunnel. Carlos froze. The tray trembled, the drink splattered, red, like blood. Lucio continued, not for Carlos, for the restaurant, for the cameras Macedo had installed, for Clara's cell phone that was broadcasting live. This man humiliated me in this very place, because I'm disabled, because I thought I should prove something. But I don't need to prove anything, not to him, not to anyone. Carlos finally moved, quickly, very quickly. The hand holding the tray released something, small, metal blade, not a knife, a stiletto, surgical, precise for the jugular. Lucio didn't move. He had expected this, he had planned this. The chair had a brake, he had activated it, fixed, immobile. And when Carlos attacked, the attack surface wasn't there. Lucio had fallen, on purpose. He had slid from the chair to the floor. Again, like that night, but different. This time, he wasn't the victim. It was bait. The blade passed over his head, cutting through the air, and then security, Macedo, police, journalists all entering. At the same time, cameras filming, Carlos paralyzed, gun in hand, victim on the ground, audience witnessing, the narrative inverted. The hero becoming the villain, in real time. Carlos looked at Lucio, on the ground, smiling, not in triumph, in sadness, because he knew, they both knew, this wasn't victory, it was just the beginning. Comment part 2. If you want to see Carlos's public trial, and the final revelation that changes everything. The police didn't use handcuffs immediately. They hesitated. Carlos still held the stiletto, but the point was pointing downwards towards his own knee, not towards Lucio, a posture of defeat or of truce. Macedo entered first, pushing journalists, security trying to restrain him, but he advanced. He stopped between Carlos and Lucio, protecting whom? Both, in some way. The senator looked at Carlos and saw something he didn't expect. Not a monster, not a villain. Broken, like Lucio had been seen on the floor days before. Two broken men, distorted mirrors of each other. Lucio was still on the red carpet, on the floor, not trying to get up, not this time. He had set the chair aside. He was vulnerable, on purpose, to show, to prove, or perhaps because for the first time he didn't have the energy to feign strength. Clara pushed through the crowd. She picked up the chair. She helped Lucio sit down. But he didn't thank her, his eyes fixed on Carlos, who hadn't yet been handcuffed. He was still breathing the same air. He still had a choice. Lucio spoke, to the police, to Macedo, to the cameras. "Don't arrest him. Not yet. I want to show something." Carlos looked up. He found Lucio. Confusion, a power shift. The hunter was now the hunted. But the hunted offered something, peace, or a deeper trap. Lucio took something out of his pocket, a flash drive, golden, a miniature of the trophy he had received. The prize, but different. Carlos recognized it. What he had stolen from the loft, what he had found in the trophy. He had thought it was proof. Proof of what? Lucio explained. Loud, for everyone. This contains videos, recordings of me from 3 years, of my treatment, my rehabilitation, moments I never showed, shame, pain, frustration, anger, moments when I broke down, when I screamed, when I hated everyone, because I couldn't accept it. I couldn't accept the wheelchair. I couldn't accept the limitation. I hated doctors. I hated therapists. I hated those who helped me because I needed to hate someone. Lucio paused. He swallowed, hard. Carlos saw me on the floor that night. He thought I accepted it, that I was weak, but that wasn't it. I was tired of years fighting against myself. You, Carlos, you didn't humiliate me. You freed me. You showed me that staying on the floor isn't the worst. The worst is never getting up, and I got up, not that night, but later, because you existed, because you were cruel. So thank you. Lucio held out the flash drive. To Carlos, not to the police, to Carlos. Take it, watch it, then decide if you still want to destroy me, or if you understand that we are the same, both broken, both trying. Carlos looked at the flash drive. Small, golden, heavy, trembling hand. The police finally moved, but Macedo raised his hand. Stopped, waiting. Carlos took it with the hand that held the box cutter. The weapon fell on the carpet. Silence. The sound of metal on fabric. Carlos looked at the flash drive, at Lucio, and asked, "Why?" Lucio answered, whispered, almost inaudible, "Because you have a son. And I don't want him to grow up thinking his father is a monster. I want him to see, to choose, to forgive, or to understand that fathers also break, and sometimes scratch their children unintentionally." Carlos knelt, not in supplication, from weight. The weight of 100 days, of 100 nights, of the nightmare, of the persecution, of the hatred, of the certainty. That was falling apart. He held the flash drive, squeezed it, and cried, not crocodile tears, tears of destruction, tears of someone who built walls and discovers they are made of paper. The press filmed. Macedo cried. Clara cried. Even the hardened police looked away, but Lucio didn't. He looked, firmly, at Carlos, and he saw the man, not the monster. The man who could be saved or not, but who at this moment was seen, truly seen, and that for Carlos was more terrible than any prison, more painful than any knife. Leave a like if this twist moved you, and comment part 2 to see what's on the flash drive and if Carlos really changes. The police didn't take Carlos away immediately. There was something in the scene that paralyzed the action, the exchange, the flash drive, the tear. Macedo intervened. He spoke softly to the police chief. Arguments, influence, money, or perhaps simply the truth that arresting him now wouldn't solve anything. Carlos was taken to a side room of the restaurant. Not handcuffed, but escorted. 2 walls and a door. No windows. Lucio was invited to accompany him. He refused. He didn't need to see the reaction. He only needed to know that the seed had been planted. But Clara insisted, "You need to be there. For him and for you." Lucio agreed. He entered the room. Carlos was seated. The flash drive was on the dark wood table, untouched. Yet, the police were outside, frosted glass, only a silhouette, privacy for what was to come. Carlos looked at Lucio, not with anger, with fear. Fear of what he was going to discover, fear that Lucio was right, fear that the narrative he had constructed, hero, victim, protective father, was just that, narrative, fiction, comfortable lie. Carlos picked up the flash drive. Firm hands now, military control. He put it in the tablet the police had allowed, no internet, only reading, screenlit, single file, video. 3 years ago, younger Lucio, without the grey beard, in his eyes, still hope, wheelchair, hospital, physical therapy, trying to get up, falling, again. The 10th fall, the 20th, Lucio screaming, not from pain, from frustration, hitting his useless legs, demanding they respond, insulting doctors, sending nurses away, throwing food on the floor, a broken man, not from the fall, from the refusal to accept. The video cut. Another scene, night, Lucio alone, bathroom, looking at his reflection, knife in hand, considering, pondering, the end, the knife touching his wrist, without cutting, just pressing, the red mark, memory, decision to return or to give up. The video cut again, last scene, morning, sun, Lucio in the chair, in front of the mirror, forced smile, saying to himself, "You are valid, not despite the chair, with the chair. It is part, not definition, but part." The video ended. Black screen. Carlos looked at Lucio, really looked, and saw. The same struggle, the same fall, the same decision, daily, every morning. Lucio wasn't a saint. He was a survivor, like Carlos had tried to be, in the war, in the field hospital, when his superior died. Carlos, too, had considered the knife. He, too, had pondered the end. But he had chosen to continue. The difference, the only difference. Lucio had chosen not to hate. Carlos had chosen to hate for both of them. The flash drive fell from his hand. Carlos couldn't hold it, the solidity abandoning him. He looked at his own hands, hands that had saved lives, hands that had taken lives, hands that had broken Lucio, and that now trembled. "I didn't know," Carlos said, whispered. "Broken. I didn't know that I also broke." Lucio finished. "We always break, all of us. The chair is visible, obvious. Its breaking is invisible, internal but the same, real." Carlos covered his face with his hands. The tears came, different this time, not destruction, of recognition, of seeing the other, and finally seeing himself. The door opened. Macedo entered, with news. Arthur, the son, seen, at the entrance, looking for his father. Carlos stood up, quickly, alarmed. He didn't want his son to see like this, defeated, broken, trapped. But Lucio said, "Let him. He needs to see, not the shame, the truth, that parents break and fix, or try to." Carlos nodded, sadly, nod. Preparation for what was to come. The police entered, with handcuffs this time, but more gently, protocol. Carlos extended his hands before his son, who entered the room, eyes wide, seeing his father, seeing Lucio, seeing the chair, confusion. "Father?" Carlos looked at his son and said, the truth for the first time. "Arthur, I was wrong. I was cruel to this man, not because he deserved it, because I was hurt. And being hurt hurts. It's not an excuse. It's an explanation. You don't need to forgive me. You just need to know that it's not like that you don't resolve hatred with hatred." Lucio finished, looking at Arthur. "Your father did bad things, but he was also good. He saved lives. In the war, he lost comrades. The pain sometimes blinds, but it can heal, if faced." Arthur looked at both of them, two men, one standing handcuffed, one sitting free, but somehow inverted, and he asked, a child lost in a grown adult. And now, what happens? Subscribe to the channel. The answer to what happens to Carlos and Lucio comes in part 2, and you won't believe the outcome. Arthur's question hung in the air, heavy, existential, and now Lucio looked at Carlos and saw the answer before it was spoken. not in words, in drooping shoulders. In handcuffs that reflected the dim light of the room, Carlos was taken away, not dragged, walking but different, without military posture, without arrogance. Broken, yes, but in a way that allowed reconstruction. Macedo accompanied him, ensuring that the process was fair, not lenient, fair. The police needed a witness. Lucio agreed, but with conditions. He would speak. He would tell the truth, all of it, including the part he hadn't shown in the video. The part Carlos hadn't seen, the diagnosis, the ALS, the 6 months. Macedo objected, his voice trembling. Why? Because justice isn't revenge, Lucio said. It's balance. Carlos tried to destroy me, but he failed. I'm stronger than he thought, stronger than I thought, and he's more fragile than he imagined. Justice needs to see that. The law doesn't. The law sees crimes, punishments, but true justice sees people. In court 3 weeks later, Lucio kept his word. He testified from the chair, literally, without getting up, without pretending, visibly ill now. The illness had progressed rapidly, weaker hands, slurred speech, but his presence intact, clear eyes. Carlos was in the defendant's dock, orange uniform, disheveled hair, looking down, until Lucio said something that wasn't in the script, something that surprised even the lawyers. Carlos Ramirez isn't a monster. He's a man who lost his way, and I lost my way too. The difference is that I found help. He didn't. Until now, the judge hesitated. Lucio asked for something unprecedented. Community service instead of prison. With one condition: Carlos would work with disabled people, not as punishment, as education, as redemption. He would learn. He would see. He would truly see those he had humiliated, those he had feared, those who were just people. The judge considered it at length and agreed surprisingly, perhaps because of the cameras, perhaps because of the history, or perhaps because, on that day, justice wanted to be just. Carlos looked at Lucio for the last time in that courtroom and asked, his voice hoarse, "Why are you doing this?" "Because you have a son," Lucio repeated, "and I no longer have time to hate. Hating is a luxury for those who have time. I only have enough to forgive or try." Carlos nodded, once, long, meaningful, and said thank you. 2 syllables, simple, but heavy as lead, as gold, as forgiveness. Lucio left the courtroom. Clara was waiting for him, with the new chair, electric this time, comfortable, adapted. He smiled, knowing that each day was alone, that ALS didn't forgive, but he had chosen to continue. The difference, the only difference. Lucio had chosen not to hate. Carlos had chosen to hate for both of them. The flash drive fell from his hand. Carlos couldn't hold it. The solidity abandoning him. He looked at his own hands, hands that had saved lives, hands that had taken lives, hands that had broken Lucio, and that now trembled. "I didn't know," Carlos said, whispered. "Broken. I didn't know that I also broke." Lucio finished. "We always break, all of us. The chair is visible, obvious. Its breaking is invisible, internal, but the same, real." Carlos covered his face with his hands. The tears came. Different this time. Not destruction, of recognition, of seeing the other, and finally seeing himself. The door opened. Macedo entered, with news. Arthur, the son, seen, at the entrance, looking for his father. Carlos stood up, quickly, alarmed. He didn't want his son to see like this, defeated, broken, trapped. But Lucio said, "Let him, he needs to see, not the shame, the truth, that parents break and fix or try to." Carlos nodded, sadly, preparation for what was to come. The police entered, with handcuffs this time, but more gently, protocol. Carlos extended his hands before his son, who entered the room, eyes wide, seeing his father, seeing Lucio, seeing the chair. Confusion. "Father?" Carlos looked at his son and said, "The truth, for the first time. Arthur, I was wrong, I was cruel, to this man. Not because he deserved it, because I was hurt. And being hurt hurts. It's not an excuse, it's an explanation. You don't need to forgive me. You just need to know that it's not like that you don't resolve hatred with hatred. Lucio finished, looking at Arthur. Your father did bad things, but he was also good. He saved lives. In the war, he lost comrades. The pain sometimes blinds, but it can heal if faced. Arthur looked at both of them. Two men, one standing, handcuffed, one sitting free, but somehow inverted. And he asked, a child lost in a grown adult. And now, what happens? Subscribe to the channel. The answer to what happens to Carlos and Lucio comes in part 2, and you won't believe the outcome. Arthur's question hung in the air, heavy, existential. And now? Lucio looked at Carlos and saw the answer before it was spoken. Not in words, in drooping shoulders, in handcuffs that reflected the dim light of the room. Carlos was taken away, not dragged, walking, but different, without military posture, without arrogance. Broken, yes, but in a way that allowed reconstruction. Macedo accompanied him, ensuring that the process was fair, not lenient, fair. The police needed a witness. Lucio agreed, but with conditions. He would speak, he would tell the truth, all of it, including the part he hadn't shown in the video, the part Carlos hadn't seen, the diagnosis, the ALS, the 6 months. Macedo objected, his voice trembling. Why? Because justice isn't revenge, Lucio said. It's balance. Carlos tried to destroy me, but he failed. I'm stronger than he thought, stronger than I thought, and he's more fragile than he imagined. Justice needs to see that. The law doesn't. The law sees crimes, punishments, but true justice sees people. In court 3 weeks later, Lucio kept his word. He testified from the chair, literally, without getting up, without pretending. Visibly ill now. The illness had progressed rapidly. Weaker hands, slurred speech. But his presence intact. Clear eyes. Carlos was in the defendant's dock, orange uniform, disheveled hair, looking down, until Lucio said something that wasn't in the script, something that surprised even the lawyers. Carlos Ramirez isn't a monster. He's a man who lost his way, and I lost my way too. The difference is that I found help. He didn't until now. The judge hesitated. Lucio asked for something unprecedented. Community service instead of prison. With one condition: Carlos would work with disabled people, not as punishment, as education, as redemption. He would learn, he would see, he would truly see. Those he had humiliated, those he had feared, those who were just people. The judge considered it, at length, and agreed, surprisingly, perhaps because of the cameras, perhaps because of the history, or perhaps because, on that day, justice wanted to be just. Carlos looked at Lucio for the last time in that courtroom and asked, his voice hoarse, "Why are you doing this?" "Because you have a son," Lucio repeated, "and I no longer have time to hate. Hating is a luxury for those who have time. I only have enough to forgive or try." Carlos nodded, once, long, meaningful, and said, "Thank you." 2 syllables, simple, but heavy as lead, as gold, as forgiveness. Lucio left the courtroom. Clara was waiting for him, with the new chair, electric this time. Comfortable, adapted. He smiled, knowing that each day was alone, that ALS didn't forgive, but also knowing that before the end, he had done something that would last. Not the architect's prize, not the buildings, the choice, not to destroy those who had destroyed him, to offer a hand, even to those who had trampled on him. Comment part 2. If you want to see the last chapter, Lucio's funeral and Carlos's final transformation. Lucio died 5 months later, not 6. The ALS had accelerated, or perhaps he had accelerated, given up the fight, not out of weakness, out of completion. He felt he had finished what he needed to, with Carlos, with Clara, with himself. The funeral was in the church he had restored. Stained glass windows projecting colors onto the closed coffin. Macedo spoke. Clara cried. Politicians who had previously ignored him appeared. Photos, opportunism, but among them someone unexpected. Carlos, work uniform, not orange. Blue, from an NGO, rehabilitation center, where he was serving his alternative sentence, working, really, not pretending, bringing coffee, reading to patients, learning names, stories, accompanying, not saving, just a gift, as Lucio had taught, without words, with presence. Carlos didn't approach the coffin immediately. He waited. End of the line. Everyone else went, and then, alone, he spoke, softly. To the wood and lacquer, I promise. 3 words. He didn't specify what, but whoever heard, Clara peeking from the sacristy, understood. A promise to continue, to not turn back, to honor, with life, the only tribute that mattered. Arthur was with him, son, witness, of who his father had been, of who he had become. The transformation wasn't instantaneous nor easy. Months of anger, of relapses, of nights Carlos woke wanting to hate again. But the image of Lucio, on the floor, offering a hand, returned, like light, like a reminder, choice. There was always a choice. At the funeral, Carlos did something unexpected. He took Lucio's chair, the last one, electric. He said he wanted it, not as a trophy, as a tool, a project. The NGO needed it, chairs of resources, and him, Carlos Ramirez. Former security guard, former stalker. Now he would raise funds, build ramps, change lives. Not complete redemption, never complete. Scars remain, but direction, different. Clara saw and approached. For the first time without suspicion, offered a hand. He hesitated, trembling, remembering, and accepted. Like if this transformation moved you. And subscribe for part 2. Where we'll see Carlos years later proving that real change is possible. 5 years, the time Lucio didn't have. Carlos used it for both of them. The NGO had grown, 2 centers, 300 wheelchairs donated, thousands of ramps built. Not salvation, numbers, real impact. Carlos was at the first center, Tuesday morning, welcoming, smiling, different from the smile at the restaurant. This one had no pretense, no defense. It was simply present. A woman entered, wheelchair user, young, furious eyes, revolt, recently, still burning. She looked at Carlos. She recognized him. The internet never forgets. You, she said, the man from the video, a verbal gun at the ready. Carlos didn't defend himself. He just stood up, slowly, with difficulty, one leg, a prosthesis, the other. Still real, but rusty. MS, multiple sclerosis, diagnosed 3 years ago after the funeral. Karma, irony, poetic justice. He was in the chair now, literarily, the one he had used, Lucio's, adapted, his. The woman saw, the prosthetic leg, the difficulty, the chair. Silence, Carlos said. I am not an example, nor a hero. I am a warning, and perhaps hope that it is possible to change, even when it seems impossible, even when we don't deserve it, even when we hurt too much. The woman didn't smile, not yet, but she sat down and listened. The story, complete, from the beginning, from the restaurant, from the floor, from the forgiveness. And when Carlos finished, showing Lucio's video, the last one, recorded before he died, for cases like this, for moments like this, Lucio's message, screen, pale face, weak voice, but eyes, alive. If you're seeing this, it's because he tried. Carlos tried to be better. Don't forgive him for my sake. I'll lose him if I succeed, but see him, really see him, and give him a chance, a second chance, which we all need. The screen went dark. The woman cried. Carlos too, finally. After 5 years, the tears he had held back, out of shame, out of gratitude, out of longing, for a man he had known for less than a week, but who had changed everything. Carlos's chair creaked as he moved. Same sound, same beep. From Lucio's chair, he looked down and smiled at the chair, at himself, at the memory, and said, softly, thank you, not to the woman, to the air, to the space, to Lucio, wherever he was, helping, still. The camera moved up to the center, showing the plaque on the door, Lucio Mendez Center, founded by Carlos Ramirez, in memory of the man who saw me when I was invisible, even for myself. The final screen, black, credits, but first. One last image, photo, 2 men, in the restaurant, Lucio on the floor, Carlos kneeling, holding hands. Moment before the tragedy, and redemption, text superimposed. The chair, it's empty now, but never truly empty. Closing. Comment. Part 2. If this story transformed you, and subscribe for more stories that prove no one is beyond redemption.